My name is Claire Donovan. I was 38 years old when my former mother-in-law decided to celebrate my divorce in the middle of a crowded courthouse hallway. She stood only a few feet away, dressed in an expensive navy suit, smiling as though she'd finally won a battle she'd been fighting for years. "My son finally found a real woman," she said loudly. "Someone who knows how to build a family instead of chasing a career." The hallway fell silent. People looked at me, waiting for tears or anger. I simply looked back at her. "Is that what you believe?" I asked. She laughed. 5 minutes later, the courtroom doors opened, and a single court file changed everything she thought she knew. 3 years earlier, I believed my marriage to Ethan Harper was unbreakable. We had been together for almost 12 years. I worked as a civil engineer. Ethan owned a successful landscaping company. We weren't wealthy, but we had built a comfortable life through long hours and shared dreams. There was only one thing missing: children. For years we tried. Every holiday became another reminder of what we didn't have. Every family gathering included another awkward question. Every birthday ended with another quiet disappointment. Eventually, I scheduled medical testing. Everything came back normal. When I suggested Ethan be tested too, he became defensive. He insisted there was no reason. His mother, Linda, supported him immediately. "A real man doesn't need doctors to tell him he's healthy," she once said across my own dinner table. I stayed quiet. Looking back, silence protected everyone except me. Not long afterward, the whispers began. Neighbors stopped asking when we'd have children. Church friends started giving me sympathetic smiles. Linda had already answered the question for them. Poor Claire. Some women simply aren't meant to be mothers. She repeated those words so often that people stopped treating them like gossip. They became fact. Even Ethan never corrected anyone. That hurt more than I could admit. Then came the divorce. He claimed we had grown apart. 6 months later, he married a woman named Melissa. Within a year, Linda proudly announced Melissa was expecting. She made sure everyone heard. She especially made sure I heard. Every photo online, every family celebration, every smug smile. I let it all pass. Until it reached my career. One of my biggest contracts disappeared after rumors spread that my unstable personal life made me unreliable for leadership. Years of hard work began slipping away because of lies that had nothing to do with my profession. That was the moment I hired an attorney. Not for revenge. For my name. My lawyer, Rachel Green, listened carefully before saying something I never forgot. "Truth doesn't have to shout," she said. "It only has to be documented." We filed a defamation lawsuit. Linda refused to apologize. Instead, she doubled down. Court filings claimed my infertility had destroyed the marriage. They insisted everything they said was true. Rachel smiled when she read their response. "They've just made this much easier." I didn't understand. She explained that if Ethan's legal defense depended on proving I couldn't have children, then his own medical history suddenly became relevant. The judge agreed. Relevant records would be reviewed privately by the court. I waited. Waiting felt harder than the lawsuit itself. Then Rachel called. "I think you should come to my office." She never sounded emotional. This time she did. A sealed medical report sat on her desk. Only one paragraph mattered. 3 years before our divorce, Ethan had undergone fertility testing. The diagnosis was clear. He had been informed that natural conception was extremely unlikely without specialized treatment. Treatment he had never pursued. Treatment he had never mentioned. I stared at the page for a long time. I wasn't celebrating. I was grieving. Every insult, every rumor, every pitying glance, all built upon a truth he had hidden from everyone. Especially me. Then another detail surfaced. Melissa's pregnancy timeline didn't match Ethan's medical history. No accusations were made. No conclusions were rushed. But the inconsistency became part of separate family court proceedings. DNA testing was eventually ordered through that case. The results answered every remaining question. Ethan was not the biological father. The morning of our hearing, I remembered Rachel's advice. Stay calm. The courtroom filled with familiar faces. Former neighbors, business associates, members of Linda's church. Everyone who had quietly accepted the story about me. Rachel presented the facts one by one. No dramatic speeches. No personal attacks. Only documents. Medical records. Employment records. Witness testimony. The judge reviewed every page carefully. Then Ethan's diagnosis was read into the record. The room became perfectly still. Linda looked at her son. He couldn't meet her eyes. When the DNA findings from the related proceeding were acknowledged, her expression changed completely. Confusion, shock, disbelief. She slowly sat down without saying another word. For years, she had defended a story because she loved her son. Now she realized the story had never belonged to me. After the hearing, Linda approached me outside. Her confidence was gone. I didn't know, she whispered. For the first time, I believed her. I know, I answered quietly. But you never asked. She lowered her head. There was nothing left to argue. Months later, my company offered me the leadership position I had lost. The board admitted the rumors had influenced decisions they never should have questioned. My reputation returned. More importantly, so did my peace. People often assume revenge feels satisfying. They're wrong. Watching someone else's lies collapse isn't joy. It's relief. Because the weight they placed on your shoulders finally belongs where it always should have. I never hated Linda. I never even hated Ethan. Eventually, I realized carrying resentment only kept me tied to a chapter that had already ended. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it arrives inside an ordinary folder, resting on a courtroom table. Sometimes one page says more than years of arguments ever could. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand quietly while the truth introduces itself. My name is Hannah Brooks, and for almost 8 years, I believed the worst thing anyone could lose was a marriage. I was wrong. The worst thing to lose is your own name. The afternoon my former mother-in-law decided to destroy what little dignity I had left, I had just finished a meeting at the county courthouse. She spotted me across the hallway. Her smile appeared before her words. Lydia finally gave my son the family you never could, she announced loudly. Some women simply aren't meant to be wives. People stopped walking. Conversations faded. My former best friend, Lydia, stood beside my ex-husband, Daniel, gently rocking the stroller that held their newborn daughter. No one spoke. Everyone watched me. I looked at Evelyn, my former mother-in-law, and asked quietly, "Are you certain that's the truth?" She laughed. I've never been more certain of anything. Less than 10 minutes later, the courtroom clerk called our case. By the time the hearing ended, those same words would haunt her forever. 5 years earlier, my life looked ordinary. I taught literature at the local high school. Daniel owned a small accounting firm. We weren't glamorous people. We built our home one careful paycheck at a time. Children never came. After years of trying, my doctor recommended fertility evaluations for both of us. I completed every examination. Every report said the same thing. Healthy. Daniel refused to schedule his. He insisted nothing was wrong. His mother agreed immediately. My son comes from strong stock, she liked to remind everyone. Slowly, the whispers began. Church dinners became uncomfortable. Neighbors looked at me with sympathy. People stopped asking when we would start a family. Apparently, they already knew the answer, because Evelyn had been telling them. Poor Hannah. She just couldn't give Daniel the life he deserved. Daniel never corrected anyone. Not once. Then Lydia changed. She had been my closest friend since college. She comforted me during every failed pregnancy test. She told me none of it was my fault. Looking back, she already knew exactly where my marriage was breaking. One evening, Daniel asked for a divorce. He called it unavoidable. 3 months later, he moved into Lydia's house. 6 months after that, they announced a pregnancy. The town celebrated. I disappeared. The rumors followed me everywhere. Parents questioned whether I should mentor their daughters. School administrators quietly removed me from leadership opportunities. Apparently, a failed marriage suggested poor judgment. It didn't matter that none of it was true. Truth travels slowly. Rumors ride much faster. I stayed silent. Until the silence reached my profession. After losing another promotion, I finally hired an attorney. His name was Michael Grant. He listened carefully, before asking one simple question. Can they prove what they've been saying? I admitted I didn't know. Neither did they. We filed a defamation lawsuit. The response arrived 3 weeks later. Daniel's attorney argued the statements weren't defamatory because they reflected reality. Their filing specifically blamed me for our inability to have children. Michael leaned back in his chair. They've made a mistake. I frowned. What kind? The kind people make when they mistake confidence for evidence. Because Daniel had made my fertility central to his defense, the judge allowed limited discovery into medical records relevant to the claim. Months passed. Every week felt longer than the last. Then Michael called. I've received the records. His voice sounded different. Careful. Measured. When I arrived, a sealed folder rested on his desk. He slid one page toward me. 7 years before our divorce, Daniel had undergone testing after secretly visiting a specialist. The diagnosis explained everything. His condition made natural conception extraordinarily unlikely. He had known. The entire time. I closed my eyes. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I finally understood the weight I had been carrying. Every cruel comment, every whispered prayer, every sympathetic smile, all built upon a lie someone else created. Michael remained quiet. Then he handed me another document. Separate legal proceedings involving custody had recently included DNA testing. The child Daniel proudly claimed as his daughter was not biologically his. I stared at the page. Life suddenly made terrible sense. Lydia hadn't simply betrayed me. She had betrayed him, too. The courtroom filled quickly on hearing day. Teachers, neighbors, church members, even members of Daniel's business association. Everyone wanted answers. Michael never raised his voice. He presented employment records proving the professional harm. Witnesses confirmed Evelyn's repeated statements. Finally, he addressed the medical evidence. The judge reviewed every page carefully. Then read the relevant findings into the official record. Silence spread across the room. Daniel lowered his head. Evelyn looked from her son to the judge. No, she whispered. There has to be some mistake. There wasn't. Michael calmly explained that Daniel's own records directly contradicted years of public accusations against me. The judge acknowledged the documented damage those false statements had caused. Daniel stood. He looked toward Lydia. She refused to meet his eyes. For the first time in years, nobody looked at me with pity. They looked at the people who had created the lie. After court, Evelyn approached me outside. Her hands trembled. I believed my son. I know, I answered. I never imagined he'd lie. I nodded slowly. Neither did I. Months later, the school district restored the leadership position I had lost. Parents apologized. Colleagues admitted they should have questioned the rumors instead of repeating them. Life became quieter. Healthier. One afternoon I packed away the final box from my old marriage. Inside was a framed wedding photograph. I studied it for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not because I had won. Because I no longer needed to prove anything. People often imagine justice as shouting. I've learned it rarely sounds that way. Sometimes justice is simply a courtroom growing silent while the truth is read aloud. Sometimes it's a single page that weighs more than years of gossip. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't watching someone else fall. It's finally walking away without carrying the burden they spent years convincing you was yours. If there's one thing my story taught me, it's this. The truth doesn't always arrive quickly. But when it does, it has a way of changing everything. Don't let someone else's lies become the story you tell yourself. Stand by the truth, protect your peace, and when the right moment comes, let your actions speak louder than their words. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you that quiet strength is sometimes the greatest victory of all, Please leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to read your thoughts. And if you enjoy emotional stories about betrayal, resilience, and justice, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I'll see you in the next one.